say the prayer for us.
Dear Lord, we come to you tonight humbly and ask for your guidance and your oversight in the business with which we are charged to conduct, that it be civilly conducted, and that you provide us with maybe some added wisdom that we might need tonight.
Amen.
Watch over our first responders, including our law enforcement and our military, and keep us all safe. In your name, amen.
All right, and now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everybody. All right. We have all 6 current board members here today, so we do have a quorum. Audio and video recorders are in use. And if anybody wants to address the board, please fill out the membership form sign-up sheet, which is in the lobby, right up front. All right. All right, the first motion of business is the approval of the minutes and transcripts. And I'm sure everybody's had a chance to go through them. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the transcripts.
All right.
Second.
Mr. Matthews and Ms. Reynolds seconded. All in favor of approving the minutes and transcripts from March 18th, 2025, April 15th, 2025, the regular meeting, and April 15th, 2025, the closed executive session. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion passes. All right, next thing on the agenda is approval of memberships. April's new memberships, we had 290. Canceled memberships, we had 273, and transfers, we had 0. Can I have a motion to approve the new memberships?
So moved.
All right, Mr. Miller, thank you.
Second.
Ms. Reynolds gave us a second. All in favor to approve memberships from April, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. All right, we'll start off with some unfinished business. Professional Services, Liberty Partners, Mr. Tim Parsons is here with us. Yeah, if you don't mind.
So, yeah, we're excited to welcome Tim Parsons and Jennifer Green from Liberty Partners. We're going to be seeking renewal of their contract tonight from the board, and we thought we would have them present a legislative update before we vote on that or decide on that. And so Tim has prepared a little presentation for us.
Good evening, board. My name, again, Tim Parson. I'm the Vice President of Liberty Partners of Tallahassee, and we've got our President, Jennifer Green, here, who created our firm over 18 years ago in Tallahassee, and I think we've represented the water system for the last 5 years. It's an absolute honor to be here this evening to provide you with what would typically be our legislative wrap-up. You know, they've dropped the hanky, sign and die's been done, and we're through with the legislative session. Unfortunately, as you probably are aware now, there's a little bit of unfinished business in Tallahassee. The one thing that they are constitutionally required to do is pass a budget. They've not done that yet. There's a lot of back and forth right now between the House and the Senate and the governor to get that done, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks that issue will be resolved. So, okay. We just want to give y'all a quick overview of the Florida Cabinet. As you can see, Governor Ron DeSantis termed out next year, so he'll complete his 8 years in office, and there's already a lot of jockeying to see who's going to be taking his place next year. There's been some appointments that have recently been made. As you recall, Senator Marco Rubio was tapped to become Secretary of State, so there was a vacancy in that Senate position that was filled by former Attorney General for Florida, Ashley Moody. creating an opening there in that particular spot, which was filled by the governor's former chief of staff, James Uthmeyer, who's actually from Okaloosa County. And then you'll notice a vacancy that we still have with CFO. You remember the former CFO, Jimmy Petronas, is now your congressman. So there's been a lot of musical chairs going on. There's been a lot of focus on Florida. And, President Trump has tapped a lot of people from Florida. So we've sort of been at the front and center of the political world. And as a result, like I said, there's been a lot of vacancies. Oh, still have the same Commissioner of Agriculture, former Florida Senate President Wilton Simpson. I want to provide you an overview with the current makeup of the Florida Senate and the Florida House. There are supermajorities by the Republican Party in both chambers, which usually lends itself to accomplishing a lot, getting a lot of the big priorities done. Unfortunately, we've not seen that this session. There's been a lot of gridlock that we'll get to, but want to note that right now there's 2 vacancies in the Florida Senate. As I mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of folks moving around. There was a Florida senator down in Brevard County, Randy Fine, who won a congressional seat. So there's a vacancy there. And then former Senator Geraldine Thompson passed away. She represented the Orlando area. So there's 2 vacancies there. And then in a very surprising action that took place, what was scheduled to be the last week of the session, Senate Minority Leader Jason Pizzo from South Florida announced that, and what I'd like to note is there was a lot of people that thought that he was probably going to be the Democratic nominee for Florida governor, announced on the floor that he was leaving the Democratic Party and was going to become independent, and even went as far as to say that the Democratic Party in Florida was dead. So that was just very shocking to see that. That's why you see one independent there. So that was a big impact on the makeup of the Florida Senate. And also in the House, you see that 86 Republicans and 33 Democrats. There's one vacancy that y'all are probably aware of, and that's District 3 here. Representative Rudman had sought a congressional seat. And there's a vacancy now. District 3 elections in the general will be held on June the 10th. So you'll have representation again in the Florida House after that. Just an overview of the Florida Senate, as I mentioned. Senate President Ben Albritton is from the Polk County area, represents rural ag, and that's been a focus of the Florida Senate this year. Democratic leader Lori Berman was just appointed or just elected by her caucus after Jason Pizzo left for the Independent Party. Here you'll see a quick makeup of the Florida House. Speaker Danny Perez from Miami. Just want to point that out because, like I said, you've got a difference in priorities. He's from Miami. Senate President is from rural Florida, so there's been kind of a contradiction of priorities there. And then we'll get started with an overview of so far how the 2025 legislative session has gone. This was the session schedule coming into the session. You see these are interim committee weeks that take place prior to the beginning of session. We wanted to make note of the week there of January 20th through the 24th. That committee week was actually, it had to be rescheduled because Governor DeSantis scheduled a special session A, to take up the issue of illegal immigration, and that's when we really started to see a friction between the governor and the legislature, most notably the House. The governor said that immigration needed to be tackled right then and there with a new president, and the Florida needed to get out ahead of this issue. And you saw a legislature for the first time since he's been governor say, we're not going to come to Tallahassee, right when you tell us to. And there was a little bit of a pushback there. That's when we saw that, and Jennifer and I were in the House chamber when the speaker came in. No one knew what was going to happen, and they basically gavelled in and gavelled out, made those remarks, Governor, we're not going to sit here and do exactly what you want us to do when you want us to do it, and they called the next special session that really was based off the call that of the immigration reforms that they wanted to hear. And then immediately following that, they did a veto override on several measures that the governor had vetoed the previous year. So it made for incredible political theater because it's certainly nothing that we've seen since Governor DeSantis has been in office. All of the past legislatures, they've just worked in tandem, and they've really went and accomplished, whatever his agenda might have been. So, yeah, this was something that we sort of foresaw when the House Speaker, whenever they did the organizational session, he said, we're going to reestablish the independence of the Florida House, and we've seen that really be the biggest issue this legislative session. So, I know right there at the very bottom, May the 2nd is when they were supposed to have concluded their work. They announced that day, though, that they were going to extend the legislative session to June the 6th. Since then, we've seen the House come back to Tallahassee last week and announce that they were going to extend the legislative session to June 30th. However, the Senate has not agreed to that date yet. So the way things stand today, the 2025 legislative session is scheduled to end on June the 6th, and they have to get a budget done by then because the fiscal year ends June the 30th. That's when we're looking at a potential government shutdown if they don't get the budget passed. So, quick overview of some of the legislative session statistics. You see there was almost 2,000 general bills filed. We are just starting to see roughly of the just over 200 bills that did pass both chambers go to the governor's desk, and he's taking action on those. I don't think that we've seen any vetoes from the 2025 legislative session yet, and the budget is TPD at this time. So wanted to give y'all just a super brief overview of how the legislative budget process works. Typically in September, the Legislative Budget Commission issues the long-range financial outlook. That gives the state kind of an idea of what state revenues are going to look like. What the state is seeing in the next 2 to 3 years is a decline in general revenue. So the legislature realizes that they need to make changes to the levels of spending that the state has seen the last several years. A lot of this was kind of boosted by federal dollars, ARPA dollars, CARES Act dollars, that saw a tremendous increase in the amount of state spending. If you look at some of those numbers there, $117 billion in 23-24, and then $117.5 this last year. I think it's important to note that in fiscal year 19-20, state spending was at just over $90 billion. So a tremendous increase in state spending that we've seen the last several years. The legislature realizes that needs to be addressed. So, so this year, the governor's recommended budget came in at $115.6 billion, which was a slight decrease in what was the state spending plan last year. And you see the House came in significantly less. The Senate came in higher, but still less than what was spent last year. So that's where the two chambers currently stand with regards to their proposed spending plans. They're just $5 billion apart. So a lot of effort's going to go into reconciling those differences. What we've seen from the House is a real desire to see the state sales tax reduced. Originally, they proposed a reduction of 0.75%, which would come to one of the largest tax reductions in Florida history and even nationally. That's been their goal, while you've seen the Senate and the governor propose property tax reduction, something that they feel like targets Floridians more than a reduction in sales tax. But that's the big difference that you see there, and that's been the main sticking point between the two chambers. We received news yesterday that it looks like the House may have finally moved off that spot because Governor DeSantis said that initiative would be dead on arrival if the legislature passes sales tax reduction because of his focus on property tax relief, and I think he's also proposed a $1,000 rebate to homeowners as well. So there's a big conflict there that we think may have been resolved. That focus has now shifted on a reduction or complete elimination of the business tax rent, so the business rent tax. So I think that's what we're going to see moving forward. Yeah, I think it is going to be. extremely minimal or complete. Want to run through just a couple of the bills that did pass. HB 11 on municipal water and sewer utility rates. This is something that we've seen the last few sessions that would force municipalities to charge the same rates for utilities in areas outside of that particular city. Within their franchise area, those rates would all have to be, all remain the same. The version of the bill that passed this year, though, only relates to municipalities in Miami-Dade County, so it's not statewide, as we've seen other versions of this bill proposed in the past. Also, some legislation relating to mitigation banks and a reform of that process. The large agricultural bill passed this year that bans fluoride throughout the state, so that was a big issue that was discussed this legislative session. Utility relocation, we watched closely. For you all, ended up only applying to communication services, infrastructure. We weren't sure if that might be expanded, but it ended up just having that focus, springs restoration, as well as assault or battery on a utility worker. It increases the penalties associated with any sort of offenses committed against a utility worker, puts them on the same level of first responders as well. They're coming in after a hurricane to do repairs and stuff. They had a bad incident in Gainesville at the Gainesville Regional Utility there, where someone took shots at a worker. So that was a pretty big bill that passed this year. Some of the ones that we followed that didn't pass, the one water approach. I know. Jeff said he's been to conferences where they've talked about this idea. This was actually a resolution that was considered this year, but really an effort, I think, to share resources, which could result in areas like Central Florida and South Florida trying to obtain some of the resources that we have here in Northwest Florida. So that, I think, only had one hearing in the Senate, so it didn't get very far this year. The Florida Public Service Commission bill, though, was one that we did engage Jeff on this session, and that was going to make changes to how the PSC oversees water utilities. Senate Bill 354 was filed by Senator Gates, so it was something that we followed, and fortunately it didn't get too far in the process this year, but would have made some major changes to oversight of utilities by the PSC. And then utility service and water management districts with kind of an overhaul of how the districts operate and their governance structure. This time I have Jennifer speak to some of the constitutional amendment changes.
I have to have sharp elbows to be able to come over here because Tim has claimed stake. So thank you and thank you, Jeff, for the invitation. Constitutional amendment reform, we're going to touch on it briefly just simply because the legislature keeps coming back to these amendments that end up on the ballot. There's 5 ways to put an amendment on the ballot, but the 2 most common are a legislative approach or House Joint Resolution, and then the other is a citizens initiative. And the legislature has consistently made it tougher and tougher for citizens initiatives to be put on the ballot, and that's largely because of out-of-state groups paying signature gatherers. So this was, House Bill 1205 was one attempt at trying to revise some requirements for initiative petitions. And the financial impact statement on the petition form is different. It used to just be on the ballot itself. You could see what the financial impact by our economists was. Requires petition circulators to be Florida residents and U.S. citizens, and then a prohibition on convicted felons who haven't had their rights restored. This third provision about the number of election cycles, how long you can keep those signatures valid, it is 3, but they're also doing a percentage of it. So you can't just keep them and then wait until, you get 5 election cycles down the road. The second to last bullet, the prohibition of using public funds to advocate. If y'all remember, there were 2 major constitutional amendments that were proposed that the governor was very opposed to, and the legislature was a little bit frustrated that some agencies and agency resources were being utilized to fight those amendments. So I think they've made it very clear, abundantly clear, what can be used in terms of public funds. And then this last provision is pretty different, and it is about allowing and requiring your local supervisor of elections to notify voters whose signature is verified if they want to say it was misrepresented. Because there are people, again, when you turn in petition cards and petition forms, that supervisor of elections can verify based on the signature that's on file, but you as a voter don't ever know. So just a couple things there. I mentioned joint resolutions. House Joint Resolution 1215 is a constitutional amendment that was proposed by the legislature that is going to be on the November 2026 ballot. Of course, it needs 60% all due to pass. But this was the first attempt at dealing with a tax exemption, ad valorem tax exemption, and it really is focused on ag property. And this is, again, probably a good hat tip to our current Senate president, who's very, very focused on rural areas of the state, including his signature project, which has been called the Rural Renaissance Program, which we still hope will end up being funded when the legislature comes back and finishes. Property tax reforms, Tim mentioned about the approaches that the Senate and the House had as it relates to tax reform. We try to remind folks, we're in Florida. We're no further than, 60 miles from the coast, anywhere we are in the state, and we don't have a personal income tax. So when we start talking about changes to sales tax, to property tax, it tips very quickly where Florida's economy is. When you start dealing with property tax reforms, the House has a select committee the speakers put together. You look at things like changing the homestead exemption, creating a $500,000 homestead exemption in an area like Holmes County, for example. What did they say? Wasn't it 11 homes? I think there were 11 homes that were valued above that $500,000. Okay, so 11 homes are going to pay property taxes in the entire county. Those were things that members of the legislature and the House side, there's 37 members that serve on this committee of 120 people that are bringing to, it's not the Miami-Dade counties, it's not the Orange counties, it's areas where, again, that county is heavily dependent on property taxes, and the last thing they want to do is raise any other taxes within the county. Also gives the legislature, they're looking at giving the legislature the ability to increase a homestead exemption without having to go to the ballot, which we're not really sure how that's going to work. But also, I think the last provision on there, eliminating foreclosures on homestead property due to property tax liens. That is, again, a protection of Florida citizens, making sure that people don't lose their homes because they haven't paid property taxes. And if you've heard anything the governor has said in the public, he's talked a lot about, well, you own your home, why do you still have to pay rent on it in the form of property taxes? We won't bore you with details about, the police and all these other things that you need as a citizen of a county. But anyway, there's been 2 meetings of this select committee, and the speaker's been pretty clear about where he wants to see some reforms. So we think that's still TBD. So as Tim mentioned, the end date is certainly still in question, with the House and Senate, of course, not deciding on whether they're going to end on the 6th or the 30th. Last thing Florida needs, certainly from a political standpoint of the party in control of both the cabinet and the entire legislature by supermajorities, is to have a government shutdown. That just doesn't happen in Florida. So I think they will get it together, and hopefully by the end of June, the governor will have enough time to get a budget, to be able to do his vetoes and his approvals, and that we will have a budget starting again on July 1. The differences in priorities, as you can see, are really looking at putting money back into Floridians' hands. I think the House, the Senate, and the governor just have different approaches on how to do that. So these 3 gentlemen will eventually work through it. They have had a very good go, I think, over the last 6 years. There's a lot of pots and pans being banged. It's a nervous waiting game on what's going to happen because there are a lot of programs that are very dependent on funding from the state. I think the good news is that you all don't have any appropriations that we're working on from the state of Florida, and we've told all of our clients, as have our colleagues, don't expect any money this year from the legislature in the terms of member projects. However, the good news is that the Speaker and to a second extent the Senate President have looked at trying to increase funding in agencies for grant awards. Now, we've been challenged. You all are not-for-profit. We've talked with Jeff. In fact, we had lots of conversations about trying to find y'all money like we have for some of our local government clients. I think probably the success of having a cooperative relationship on the South Santa Rosa project where you've got governmental entities involved. We're going to be as creative as possible as we scrub through that budget and bounce those ideas off of Jeff. But we see some additional funding, which we think is better to be competitively looking at grants versus just whoever's got the best legislator to get them funding. So going on to 2026, and we will wrap this up and be available if y'all have any questions. There's only about a 3-month turnaround from when, if they leave truly at the end of June, let's just assume that's it, July, August, September, they can be home. And then October through December, they'll be back up for committee hearings because session begins in January. We have that every other year, beginning in January versus beginning in March. So this is what we call the short summer. The short summer, they come back because next year is an election year in 26, and they want the long summer. They want to go home and campaign and get ready for the elections. So it's a pretty aggressive schedule that we'll certainly see. So we see the fatigue with the legislature right now, many in your delegation, but around the state saying, okay, we're ready to be home. They've been told thus far by both House and Senate leaders, don't plan to come back before the Memorial Day holiday. So we'll see, TBD, what starts to come out on Tuesday or so. We've heard as of Friday, I think it was Friday, the House had given, and these are informal discussions, the House had given the Senate their 13th offer, and these offers are really on what is the total amount of the budget going to be. They're still in that phase of trying to figure it out. We can't end our presentation to y'all without thanking you for allowing us to drag Jeff to Tallahassee. It's very helpful. You know, we certainly appreciate the relationship. Caitlin is with the Water Management District, and we appreciate the good working relationship that y'all have. And then Senator Gates, you know, we were concerned about having to bring Jeff in there and say, you know, your bill's not that great. It was a great discussion. The bill hadn't been moving at that point, but even when you're not asking for something, we think it's important to continue having your voice. And again, we'll advocate for you 365 days a year, but there are some times when it's really important to actually have the person from the district. And I think, you know, hopefully, again, Jeff, thanks for being so flexible, having you all, again, advocate and talk about who you are and what you do. Happy to answer any questions, or Tim can answer questions if you have any.
Yes, Ms. Green.
Yes, ma'am.
Carmen Reynolds. Could you tell us more about that bill that Mr. Krigler went to talk with Mr. Gates about? What was the content of that bill for the Public Service Commission?
We have, I'm going to have Tim come back up here, and this is about the Public Service Commission. There, and I'll give you the short version while he's coming up. We have one of our staff members, Adam Potts, one of our lobbyists, used to work at the Public Service Commission, and one of the things that we've seen over the years is deregulating what the PSC does. Telecommunications was sort of the last thing. This bill had a provision in it that was talking about having water utilities and things being regulated by the PSC. I'm going to let you finish up the discussion. But specifically, the question was, who was it directed at? So I think, Tim, you can probably handle that.
And I think that was part of the mission, was try to find out who was the bad actor in this case that ended up initiating this legislation. And that was something that we, you know, I think we determined that it wasn't a holiday of our water system, which was a positive. But like Jennifer said, it just it shifted a lot of the oversight to the Public Service Commission, which isn't always a great place to be in. And luckily, we were able to kind of get intel and stuff from the sponsors. And really, I think this was one of the. There were a lot of bills that were, you know, that had unfavorable impacts. And that's probably one of the positive, that on May 2nd, that all those bills that hadn't passed officially died. And I think there was only 16 bills that relate to the budget and stuff that were carried forward with the call that are still alive right now that the legislature can debate and pass. So.
And we can get you, if you really want to read a copy of the bill, I think there may have been one staff analysis on it. Again, didn't move forward. It was one of those that we found out very quickly, both from the PSC, Public Service Commission, of course, reports to the legislature. All commissioners are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. And the intel we got very early was it's not going anywhere. So shot across the bow, but it did make us a little nervous of, again, increased regulation in an environment where you have a legislature that typically, and a governor who wants to see deregulation. We knew it wasn't something organic, that it was a reason. And again, we just want to make sure it wasn't y'all, and it wasn't you.
And second question,
Yes,
I know that you all are on the forefront in that deep, dark city where everything happens in that building. So can you confirm or deny that there is a doge going on from the governor's budget office to justify every budget line item with a return on investment of the budget appropriation request?
Yes, ma'am. I can confirm that. In fact, and to the extent we're not sure exactly what Florida Doge is going to come out with, but in our experience, our local government clients, both cities and counties, received communication from the governor's office. And the gentleman who was hired to handle the program actually worked for President Trump in his first presidency, and kind of an interesting background that he's got in terms of Inspector General type background. But had a conversation with him directly on Friday, because we, again, had very nervous local government clients, mostly in Northwest Florida, saying, well, we want to help the governor because we're a very red county, we're a red city. And they sent a letter back saying, yes, we want to opt into this. You can look at us. We have no problems. And then they get a list of 40 different things that, that they want provided to the governor's office. And, our first question was, well, okay, why aren't you just sending them a link to your audit, your annual audit, which should have most of this information in it? So had a conversation with the director of Doge, and his response was, we want to see efficiencies. We're not forcing this, these are local governments who said they want to do this. And so, our feedback was, keep in mind that some of these smaller local governments, the turnaround that you might want might be a little bit too tight for them. And then secondly, are you wanting them to create new records that don't already exist? And the answer was, oh, no, no, no. The third question, which I didn't ask and I really wanted to, was, isn't this supposed to be for state agencies? Why are you reaching out to counties and cities? I didn't ask that question. But point being, there is an effort, and it's the governor's office of policy and budget. It's coming out of, they're calling it EOG, the Executive Office of the Governor. But it is voluntary, and they're being very, very open, again, with local governments, asking, do you want to participate? If you do participate, here's the checklist. Here's what we're doing. We suggest you do a resolution. It's not being forced on local governments, but I think we've seen some social media posts with lists of the cities and counties that have opted in, and what was it, like 30 maybe out of 411 cities and 67 counties. It wasn't a huge amount, so we'll see what happens with it.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions?
I just want to thank you for that presentation. That was very enlightening, seeing some of the stuff that's happening down the road from us a little bit. And thank y'all for everything that y'all have done for Holly Navarro Water over the last several years. What do y'all see as some upcoming priorities for Holly Navarro Water System as far as your lobbying efforts and that kind of thing? And specifically, are there any areas as it relates to the septic to sewer conversions that we might be able to benefit from some state grant money or whatever? Do y'all see any of that in the future?
Great question. Septic to sewer conversions, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been at least 2 or 3 years, have been a huge priority for the governor. So we've seen the ability, particularly for those conversions, to happen. I think that in terms of funding, the question is, where would the funding go? Is it to the individual who actually has the septic tank and they need to do the conversion? Is there any additional financial assistance that can come to Holly Navarro Water System? How will that work? That's certainly TBD. But the good news is you have a great relationship with the Northwest Florida Water Management District, and Lyle Sigler could not be a better friend. And to areas like y'all, you have this whole area has a great relationship. Water management districts in other areas of the state, they're like this with local governments. You have a great one, and they're always looking for opportunities in terms of funding. You're on Holly Navarro Water System is on the Water Management District's radar, and certainly DEP's radar, because of the South Santa Rosa project. I mean, we use that as the example of, look, they were already investing. They were going to do this infrastructure investment. Gulf Breeze gets pulled in, the county gets pulled in, and they get additional funding. So we think that some sort of conduit type of grant funding would probably be that's a good model, and that worked for y'all. So we'll certainly be, we'll put our thinking caps on. But in terms of improvement, water quality improvement, and infrastructure that leads to any job growth, those are the type of things that will open up funding sources. We just need to figure out who to work through that funding with you all with. Direct funding from the state to a not-for-profit is typically pretty tough, but I think there's other ways to be able to still offer supplementing you all in the services you provide, and also the infrastructure you put in place, the investments you make.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Tim. You guys are awesome. We appreciate that. Jeff, just right off the top of your head, is this an increase, $35,000?
It's not, it's the same price.
It's the same that we've been
for the last 2
paying?
years.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So the staff recommendations are that we approve Liberty Partners contract renewal for 2 years in the amount of $35,000 per year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second. Oh,
Okay, we've got a
Mike,
motion
do it.
and a second.
You can have it.
From Mr. Matthews.
You can have it.
That's all right, you go ahead. You beat him to it, Mike. So, all right, so we have a motion and a second to approve of Liberty Partners contract renewal for 2 years in the amount of $35,000 per year. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion passes. Thank you again, guys. We appreciate it very much. All right, next item on the agenda, we have biosolids hauling and disposal services. Mr. Krigler.
Yes, in early spring of '24, we advertised a contract for biosolids hauling from our Pepper Drive plant. We awarded that contract to Green South. They've been doing it for a year, and now it's time to consider whether we would like to renew that contract for another year. Per their contract, they are allowed to submit for a price increase. They've requested a $2 per cubic yard price increase from $43 to $45. It ends up being a difference of several $1,000s on an annual basis, really not that much. They've done a good job for us. We'd like to keep using them. One thing I would add is that their bid was substantially lower than the other outfit that bid when we had this out on the street. There's really not a lot of entities in the Panhandle that do this. Majority of utilities in the Panhandle haul to Alabama because of the differing disposal regulations, and this happens to be one of the entities that does that. But like I said, we did this with the intent of renewing this if the service was good, they've done a good job, like I said, and they're proposing what I think is a modest price increase, so we're recommending continuing on with them for another year.
Customer service good,
Yep.
responsive.
And one thing that's important in this business is that they're relatively clean. It's obviously sludge hauling, but they're not spilling it. They're not spilling out of their truck as they go down the road. I've been involved with some of this before, where you get a lot of complaints that they get spilled, and it's a nasty stuff. So they do a clean job and dispose of it. We don't have any issues with them. So.
Okay. All right, so the staff recommendations is that we approve the extension of Green South's annual contract for contract for year 2 at the revised contract price of $45 per cubic yard for an estimated annual total of $156,000. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, Mike. And a second?
Mr. President, could we have some discussion?
We can have some discussion, absolutely.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I just wanted to get clarified. This is a 3-year contract, so what we are voting on is an increase. So we're looking at the year upcoming, $156,000, but that is really times 3 unless there's another rate increase in the out years. Is that correct?
Yeah, this would raise their price to $45, which annually is about $156,000 if you look at the amount of sludge we typically have hauled. And that would set that price. Next year, they can either do it the same price, they could ask for another, or we could choose to re-advertise it at that point. So we would have another option again next spring. We would have a couple options about what we'd like to do.
Okay. Thank you. That concludes my discussion. I'm ready to second that motion.
All right. Any further discussion from the board? All right. We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor of approving the extension of Green South's annual contract for year 2 at the revised contract price of $45 per cubic yard for an estimated annual total of $156,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion passes. All right, let's move on to CEO update. Mr. Krigler.
Yes, two quick items for update. We did hold a vehicle auction at 5 o'clock this afternoon. I wanted to thank Director Matthews for presiding over that.
Where were you guys?
Yeah, providing, representation from the board. We had one bidder show up. He bid the minimum reserve on each vehicle. So we're happy to sell him those 3 vehicles for a total of $2,500. One of those doesn't even run. So these are older vehicles. I think they're 2010 era. A lot of miles, a lot of issues. So, we tried to sell these through our first process, which was a sealed bid, and then we got no interest. So this was glad we had someone show up, and hopefully they can, get some use out of them.
How was that advertised?
It's in the Navarre Press, and she also ran in the Pensacola News Journal.
Okay.
So,
And just one bidder?
Yep.
just one bidder.
I didn't think it was anybody.
Yeah.
Didn't look like it.
And the lawyer.
Oh, well, he was overdressed. The only overdressed one. I thought he was gonna.
He was expecting a much more fun event, so he was a little disappointed.
Yeah, he
was.
All right, next item on the agenda, Director's update. Finance Committee updates. Ms. Hardy.
Yes, the Finance Committee met Thursday, May the 15th, to evaluate the financial report for March concerning the capital improvement projects as well as comparison between the budget and operating and maintenance expenses. And we also, I guess it was Jeff Week, also gave a presentation on our pension plan.
You can have that too. Go ahead, roll right into it, Pam. Roll right into
No,
it.
thank you.
Okay. I'll try it.
All right, so we'll move on to the next one, which is capital improvement. Ms. Carmen Reynolds.
Yes, that meeting was also Thursday afternoon, and we are in line on our restricted and unrestricted capital improvements. And with regard to the unrestricted area, we have some very positive news to report, which will be covered in item 8 on the agenda. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Budget and O&M, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, the Budget Committee met, and we went over, this was our first quarter, end of the first quarter results, and so normally you'd expect to see 25% of the budget utilized at that point in the year. We were right at 23% on total revenue, which slightly under because of the rate increase being delayed for the first 2 months of the year, but it should track, pretty well the rest of the year. And the total expenses were at 23% as well. So, we're in line with revenue and expenses at both being slightly under the budget for year to date on that. So anyway, we're tracking just fine. No real major outliers that affected anything. So we're on track so far this year.
Nice. Thank you, Mr. Miller. All right, here we go, Mr. Matthews, pension 401k.
I would not have remembered Jeff's name, so thank you, Pam. I was going to say the nice man from Wells Fargo showed up, and yeah, he's got everything diversified quite well. Nothing crazy, fancy, just making a little bit of money, and I don't have any concerns with his ability to keep it going as he is. All looks well on
He's
that
in charge
front.
of the pension and the 401k?
So he manages the money side of it. He's not the actuary. The actuary is the guy with GHB out of Ohio.
Gotcha.
So they work together.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Matthews. The regional reuse project, I'm going to go ahead and reach out to Jeff here.
We had a couple picks to share here. So We've installed, the majority of the pipeline on this project has been installed. We still got a piece to put in on, this is phase 1B I'm talking about, a piece on 87 to put in, and then where they're working now is on Pepper Drive. So this picture and the next one you can see is just installation of the reclaimed water pipeline down Pepper Drive. It's been challenging, as you can see, especially in that prior picture, how dark those soils are. That's indicative of kind of wet soils. It's a little bit more challenging work environment. Plus, we've had some members that have stuff planted in the right of way and things like that. So we're having to work with them on that. Had a few complaints to deal with there and try to get that worked out. So, but most of this pipeline is installed. We still got a good bit of work left at the treatment plant on the pump station. And of course, a lot of that electrical equipment is not going to come in until the end of the year. So we're still projecting first quarter 26 to have the project done. I guess the other update on that project is we were doing it quarterly, but at least twice a year we try to get. We have what's called an all phases meeting where we have all the project owners and the water management district as well as DEP get together and do kind of a large group meeting and just make sure the whole project's on track and that all the partners are kind of happy with everything's going and just to keep everybody informed. We are looking at doing that in I think we're looking at mid-June now. So Tim, you'll get an email soon about that. We're looking at June 10th hopefully. Reaching out to all those folks. So, but that's good. And that, like I said, that's just kind of opportunity for everybody to get together and share what's going on with the whole project.
Maybe get some of our representatives here.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
All right. The next item is the Club at Hidden Creek Management Board. Mr. Miller.
Yes, Club at Hidden Creek Board met and discussed some of the upcoming projects that they're working on out there. Got a big aerification going to happen around Memorial Day. They've got to time it to where it doesn't disrupt the golf any more than possible, but. As far as revenues and everything, it's still down, based on the slow start that we've had this year, but they can keep expenses in check. So, revenues and expenses are both under budget. So we're good there. As far as our spray field expenses, I know that those can vary from month to month, and while it's not in your report or anything, the April spray field expenses are going to be a little bit more because of some of the actual repairs they've had to make to spray field. They had some lightning strikes and things like that. So while they've been tracking kind of well under budget, April will be a little higher because of those repairs, and that's something that's variable throughout the year. So anyway, I know that we had some questions about that.
Okay.
Mr. President, I have a question for Mr. Miller.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Okay. Let's see if I can get this straight. I was looking at this today, and I saw that it's $84 to play. How are those rates determined? Can you help me understand that, number one? And do we have any financial goals and objectives for them for 2025?
The rates are variable based on the day of the week and the time of day and all of that. So in the seasons and all that, and I know Jeff and Trey really look at that really closely to determine what's the goal is to maximize the total amount of revenue. If you set your rates too high and you don't fill up the course, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. If you set them too low and you're 100%, you could have maybe charged a little more. So it's a kind of a moving target trying to keep those rates going. But I know there was some discussion about some increases in rates in certain categories. So,
well, $84 is high for what we're offering, and there's not a huge rate of play. So that's why I was asking these questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really got to look at, it's relative to what is being charged at all the other courses.
That's where I was going.
We're less than Tiger Point. We feel like our course is in just as good a shape as
Yeah.
Tiger Point. You have some courses in Pensacola where, quite frankly, the course is just, they've let it go and it's just not doing well at all. You can play there for $50-$60 maybe, but so it's really dependent on the product that you can put out there, how much you can charge. So we don't increase that greens fee lightly. And it's been, last year, which was a record year for us, we only raised it a couple dollars. So people will pay that amount for a good golf course, and that's what we're seeing. So I don't know that the golf course not being empty is accurate. I think the issue this year is more weather related on the weekends. We've had just a lot of rain on the weekends.
And do we promote events and tournaments and things to keep the number of games high so that we can return revenue?
We do. So one of the sheets we look at as part of the management board meetings is a list of all the tournaments that we have. I think we have two or three scheduled for June. They average about, you do a couple a month is about the average that you would have for those. Those are good to get the word out. They're good to showcase the course. But in terms of financials, you don't make as much money. Those tournaments are not necessarily big money makers. You're better off with a golf course full of golfers, just paying that rate you mentioned earlier. So, but we do like tournaments.
Thank you.
All right, we have
I'm Bill Field, 2842 PGA. I live on a number 11 green, and I can tell you this year's been totally weather dependent. Starting in March, I've had a hell of a lot of balls in my backyard, and I've seen a hell of a lot of players come through at all hours of the day, so it's gotten a lot better. January and February were a weather challenge, you don't know about the snowstorm, so I think that they should have been doing really well in March and April, I believe, because based upon what I saw go through.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about your tomato plants back there.
I thought it was my ball.
It was me trying to hit mine.
I sell for $6 a dozen.
Any other discussion on the club? All right, let's move on to the next item. Fairpoint Regional Utility System Representative, Mr. Krigler.
Yeah, really not a lot going on with Fairpoint. We're still making progress on our booster pump station project. You'll notice we still have the two booster station buildings across the street, waiting on the site work to get done so we can move those to the project site and get those hooked up. That's really the main thing. We got some minor work or meetings we're having on the member service agreement, but it's kind of minor details right now. We're working through that with the Fairpoint board. That's really it.
Okay. And I see Mr. Phillips is not here tonight.
Yeah, he's on vacation until tomorrow. I don't have any updates for him.
Okay. All right, let's move on to finance. Review of March quarterly 2025 financials. Mr. Krigler again.
Yes, and we'll let Barbara cover our March. These are our quarterly financials as well.
Yes, sir. The committee did great on their report. Just a little bit to add to it. Total revenue for the first quarter, January, February, and March, was $3,559,471.99. Total expenses was $3,252,586.51, with a total net operating income of $306,885.48. Trending right along.
Nice. Any questions or discussion from the board?
Motion to approve the financials as presented.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion and a second to approve the March quarterly 2025 financial statements. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. And then we'll just scoot on down to restatement of January 2025 and February 2025 financials. Mr. Krigler.
Yes, and I'll need Barbara's help on this one, but essentially this is an issue with our current software. It had to do with purchase orders that were created late in 2024 essentially, but not received or where the vendor would ask for payment until 2025. Those didn't hit the financial statements until after our final end of year close, and that created some issues with our January and February financial statements. So Barbara, you want to elaborate on that, and basically we'll be asking to essentially just restate January and February.
Yeah, so you know that we did not complete and the board did not approve the final audit until the April meeting.
Right.
So until prior to that, we were working in preliminary close in the accounting system. So then when the audit got approved and we did the final close, everything started hitting that was still pending while we were in preliminary close. So it's just that process. So the total January difference on the items that was received, procured, or encumbered in 24 and actually received in January was $39,000 and some change. That's the difference. And then February difference was $40,500 total difference.
Have all the invoices from 2024 been paid at this point?
Sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And trying to come up with a process next year to eliminate this from happening again.
And we're still stuck with Edmonds for
now.
How much longer?
yeah, it's frustrating.
I know.
Well, we have a plan in place.
Well, good. We were still discussing what the next plan was,
Yes, sir.
but I've heard no update. It's fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to approve January and February 2025 restatement of financials?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion from the board? All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the restated January 2025 and February 2025 financial statements. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion passes.
Point of order, Mr. President. On the municipal engineering services area, I normally see Mr. Phillips, and I was going to ask him this question. If you will entertain it, I will ask it. If you won't, I won't.
Of course. No, go ahead, Ms. Renner.
Okay. Normally, Mr. Phillips addresses I&I and the water losses, and I see that in our tab number 8. Could somebody tell us where we are on that, and are we making any progress identifying these water losses?
Yeah, I'll start, and then maybe Clinton can chime in on the I&I at least. So if you look at the monthly operating report that shows the sewer flows, it looks like the I&I is actually down this month. We're showing just under 100,000. You can see it's been averaging less than that, averaging more than that, I'm sorry. So one of the things we did is we had a meeting about a week ago at the plant to go over how basically all the flows incoming to the plant and within the plant are metered. We're looking to do some improvements there. There's some internal plant flows that aren't metered like we would like them. And we feel like this may be affecting the way we calculate this I&I number. So, we think that'll help. We're going to look at doing that. Mark Turner's going to look at adding a couple meters out there at the plant. We think that'll just give us some more precise numbers. It's been pretty dry. We haven't had any big storms lately, so I don't think we've had any, large I&I events recently. But we're looking at that, and then I think last month at the board we had PCC approved for a task order on their I&I contract to fix some lift stations and some manholes. So it's a slow process. It doesn't get all found overnight. But Mark's identifying stuff. We have a plan at the plant to upgrade the metering there that will help us with our recording where all these flows are going. So I think that's kind of the update I'd have. You got anything more than that, Clinton?
No, I mean, it is a slow process. There's hundreds of miles of sewer line in the ground, so, and places where infiltration can enter the system. It's not something that you just tackle in a year or two and get it, under control. I think we've done a great job with what we've done so far and improved on a lot of the potential sources of I&I. But it takes lots of money and lots of time to get it under control and solve it. But we've done some analysis on the basins, and even after large rains, we're not seeing a huge increase in run times on the stations for that basin. So that makes it even more difficult. So now, you've got small leaks everywhere that you can't identify, after a rain. You just really pull manholes and look whenever you can and try to camera everything you can, try to find potential sources.
I saw that Navarre Beach was doing that smoke testing to identify leaks, so I had asked Mr. Krigler, and he says we've been doing some of that also.
We utilize that as a tool too, and we've done quite a bit of it in our system. So Woodmont being one of the last areas that we did do it, and we did identify some problems there. We have some issues with some of our residents that like to drain their yards into our sewer system, and we've had to go out and weld some manholes shut. And when we find things like that, we'll have to go back and double check just to make sure they haven't found another way to drain their yard. So,
well, a little bit of education and PR, we could maybe get the word out on that. I know that we're trying to get some information out about the quality of the water and the fluoride and all of that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and on our water loss,
Yeah, that was
we're
way
pretty,
down.
yeah, we're pretty good on our water loss. I mean, every once in a while it'll bump up, around 8% or so, but the state standard is stay below 10, and we do a pretty good job with that. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that our system is leak-free, because it's not. But we hunt them down and try to fix them in a timely manner and keep that water loss down.
Yeah, my only input was we were doing real well. You guys had found some meters that you guys were adjusting that really showed that there wasn't a loss.
That's correct.
Now we've just kind of hit this little wall, so you guys push through and
Right.
figure it out. I'd be curious to see what it is, because anyway, so it's all that. But it was like
we're constantly looking, trying
creeping up,
trying
and then
to
you guys,
improve
yeah.
You boys found a leak right in front of my yard.
That's what they told
I
me.
heard about
Yeah.
We thought you might call and complain, but you didn't.
It was hot, man. They were out there in the sweating. I was like, you guys have some water. I had to take some water out there to them. No, they're good guys. They did a great job. All right. All right, let's move on to item number 7. Resolution 2025-002, System Capacity Fee Designation and Renaming. Mr. Krigler.
Yeah, so there's two topics that we're hoping to address with this resolution. The first has to do with renaming what we previously called impact fees and tap fees as system capacity fees. So we have drafted this resolution for the board to approve that, and then we'll go into all the documents that are online, all the documents we use with our developers and engineers and member services, and we'll change the naming there. So we want to accomplish that. I believe that was the need for that was explained in our board training by our attorney. So we are proceeding with that. The other thing that this other item that this resolution attempts to solve is, if you recall back when we had the rate study done in 2024, one of their recommendations was that we put all of the funds from the system capacity fees into the restricted account. Previously, it was being split 70-30. That was something that had been decided upon a while back. There wasn't a really great basis for it, and this is a truer way to utilize those funds that are basically paid by the new members on our system. So we think this is the right thing to do, and we were, drafted this resolution so we can do that. We're already doing it. This just memorializes the process. We started doing this on January 1st per the recommendations of that rate study. So that's kind of it. The resolution will accomplish those two things, and then of course we'll get the board president to sign it after it's approved.
And this will be put online as well?
Yes.
Okay. So everybody can see it. I for one, am a big proponent of renaming it because people think tap fees, and there's no correlation really between that and what we're doing. The system capacity fee makes so much more sense, and it actually describes where the money's going to. So Mr. Thiel has something to say.
Yeah, I just would, hopefully you'll approve this, and for 3 years when I was on the board, I tried every year to get this changed because nobody could ever explain to me why the 70/30 was there and what justified it, and the board never had an appetite for it. So I commend you, assuming you're going to approve this.
Thank you for your support, for sure.
I move approval of Resolution 2025-002.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion from the board? We've discussed this pretty much in depth. So I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2025-002, establishing the 100% allocation of system capacity fees to restricted funds and formally adopting the renaming of TAP impact fees as system capacity fees in all internal documents, reports, and prior policies and resolutions. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion passes.
Do we also need a motion to approve the accompanying policy? That was a motion to approve the resolution. Do we need the policy to be approved as well?
Well,
Yes.
Then
Okay.
that would be your answer.
I'll make the motion to approve policy number 2025-05-20.
Could you restate that motion again, please?
I move to approve policy, Holly Navarre Water System policy number 2025-05-20. It accompanies the resolution, but it's the
separate,
actual
yeah.
company policy
Yes,
on
company policy.
system capacity fees.
I'll second that motion.
All right, do we have any discussion from the board? All right, we have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Mark. All right. All right, item number 8, procurement truck purchase. Mr. Krigler.
Yes, so as part of our 2025 unrestricted budget, we budgeted $361,500 for the purchase of 6 trucks. In 2024, we had attempted to procure trucks using a formal advertisement. Didn't have a whole lot of luck with that. We've talked about that with the board prior. So what we've done this time is we've gotten quotes from multiple local dealerships, and we've got some good prices for these trucks. We got 2 different kind of discounts in play here. Ford has I guess they're extending their employee discount to basically anybody that buys new trucks. They're extending that through June. We're utilizing that. And there's also a fleet discount that we're getting as well. So this is a good time to make this purchase. So tab 8 there has the quotes we got. Only step 1 out of Crestview quoted all 6, but you can see that they were definitely the cheapest option there, and they're local. If you also recall, trucks we bought in 2024 came from Georgia. They had to pay to have those shipped down, even though they were cheaper at the time. Going that way through the procurement process. So we think this is the best way to approach this. These are they look like they're at a good value, and we're looking forward to move forward with this quote from step 1.
That's around $90,000 under budget.
Excellent.
That is correct, Mr.
Yes.
President, and advantageous, and I motion for approval.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to approve the purchase of 6 trucks in the amount of $272,641.02 from Step One Automotive in Crestview. Any further discussion from the board?
Just a clarification, that is all of the trucks that we're replacing this year?
That's correct.
Yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. President. Does this mean we will have to inevitably auction anything as a result of this?
You're up this time.
I will say this, so the 3 that we did this afternoon were really the older, I'd say the older ones we have. The next batch we get rid of will be more desirable in terms of selling them for, recouping some money. That's not true. No, we haven't. Well, they're running.
Clinton's like, well, one of those was my truck. So
Yeah, that's right.
I know it's in pretty bad shape. No, I was kidding. All right, so let's go back. Any further discussion from the board on the purchase of these vehicles? All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the purchase of 6 trucks in the amount of $272,641.02 from Step One Automotive in Crestview. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion passes.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would like to say that these are the kinds of actions that I believe the members of the water system look to us to ferret out and make these type of cost-saving initiatives.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Thank you.
So, thank you. All right, we're going to engineering. Mr. Phillips is not here. Clinton, you have anything, operations?
I pretty much covered it in Santa Rosa County reuse and with our water loss and our I&I, pretty
Okay.
well it for the month, so.
All right. All right, next item is member forum. Anyone? Mr. Thiel? All right.
I just got one question, Mr. President. Is there, there may not be any, but I was wondering if there's been any update on the legal challenges
Oh,
that
thank you
came out of the election?
thank you for bringing that up. I was going to call, it's not on the agenda, and I almost forgot about it. Thank you so much. We're going to call on our attorney, Mr. Dunaway, to give us a quick update on the legal action.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I briefed you in your special meeting, board members, on April the 15th, a hearing was set for June the 4th at 1 p.m. That'll be by Zoom, and that is on the motion which was filed jointly with the plaintiff for a case management hearing, in which we both will be asking the judge for an expedited final hearing and to set an aggressive timeline for discovery. We're going to request that the judge set a final hearing in time for a resolution to keep us on schedule for our August election cycle. Now, I can't tell you that we'll grant that, but that's going to be the joint ask, and that's the latest that we have.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Dunaway. We appreciate that. All right. If nobody else wants to address the board,
Mr. President?
Hang on.
Oh, yes. Ms. Reynolds?
Yes, for accuracy of the official record, point of order, when Director Matthews motioned for approval of the minutes and transcripts, it was just for, he mentioned March 18th. So for clarification, we need some guidance as to whether that motion needs to be specific as to each one that we voted on.
Okay, good catch.
I actually picked up that he had mentioned all 3. If that
You did? Okay.
No, did not.
No, not in his motion, but when the president conducted the vote, he did speak to all 3.
Right. All right, well, let's circle back around if better to...
Which one are we on?
Sorry, so we're on...
Minutes and transcripts?
Yeah, the approval of minutes and transcripts. So we'll just go ahead and cover all 3. I'm looking for a motion to approve minutes and transcripts from the March 18th, 2025 regular meeting, the April 15th, 2025 regular meeting, and the transcripts, of course, and then April 15th, 2025 closed executive session minutes.
I hate to be a stickler, but the March 18th meeting is just the transcripts. We approved the minutes last month.
Yeah, you're right.
So just restate what he said in your motion.
I was gonna do a so moved. No? Okay. All right.
Just speak to them item by item.
I motion to approve the March 18, 2025 regular meeting transcripts. April 15, 2025 regular meeting transcripts and the April 15 close.
And minutes.
Minutes
And transfer.
and transcripts. Am I done? I thought I did. April 15th, close executive session minutes.
All right.
There you go.
We have a motion,
Sounds
we
like you
have a
should've done
second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Matthews.
I don't know.
Can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.